Wild plants are a valuable resource for humanity, being used for millennia in medicines, cosmetics, and foods. The majority of people in developing countries still depend on wild plant harvesting for food, medicine, fiber for clothing, and building materials. In many developing countries, but even in America and Europe, wild plant collection provides valuable income for rural households. You may not know it, but many of the everyday products you buy contain ingredients from wild plants. Around 60,000 plant species are known to be used by humans for their medicinal properties alone. The vast majority are collected from the wild. Trade in medicinal plants is increasing, driven by consumer demand. However, a considerable proportion of the world's wild plants are under threat, with 1 in 5 of the world's plant species estimated to be at risk of extinction in the wild. The problems they are facing include overharvesting and habitat loss. Traditional knowledge of wild harvesting techniques is also being lost as people move away from rural areas and into cities. To address these problems, conservation and development organizations developed the FairWild standard as a best practice standard for sustainable wild harvesting and equitable trade. The FairWild standard requires that wild plants are collected sustainably in compliance with laws and regulations. The customary rights and traditional practices of local communities must also be respected, and the benefits of collection shared throughout the supply chain. Collectors must be paid a fair price for their work, with reliable payment conditions. Following fair trade principles, a social premium is paid by buyers of the wild plant ingredients, which is then used to benefit collectors and their communities. The FairWild standard can be used in different ways by various stakeholders. It forms the basis for a third-party audited certification system and can be used by the private sector to ensure sustainable supply chains. Its principles and criteria have also proven to be invaluable for collection communities in managing their wild plant resources, for governments in developing regulations, and for international conventions. When you buy a product that has the FairWild certification mark on it, you know that the collectors involved in wild harvesting of the plants have received a fair compensation for their work and goods, a commitment for investment in a social premium fund to benefit their communities, and that their plants were collected sustainably. The goals of investing in these communities are to foster economic stability, preserve their culture, and provide opportunities for future generations. Together, if we take the right steps now, we can ensure a sustainable future for wild plants and the people who rely on them. A fair deal for people and wild collected plants involves us all.